This call is now being recorded.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for part 2 of the top 10 thrash metal bands of all time. We got Dirty Mouth and Dylan here. Dirty, welcome back.
Yeah.
So we went through numbers 10 through 6 with a couple of additions. So we're going to go through the top 5 here. Before we do this real quick, we do like other forms of metal besides thrash metal. In fact, we were talking about before this, like I've been dying to get an episode. We just started doing the music stuff here, I know, with Ozzy Iron Maiden, top 10 thrash. We're going to do top maybe metal albums of all time, thrash metal albums or something. I've been dying to get something with Merciful Fate and King Diamond in an episode because I love them so much. They just don't fit into the thrash metal category. Also, Dirty, I've been listening to some of the 80s albums besides heavy metal. I've been listening to some of the bands, re-listening to some of the bands that I guess would be considered more hard rock. I separate them like that. I can't stand the term hair metal because everyone had long hair back then in metal. I mean, everyone does. It's like, yeah, and it's kind of reductive and insulting. Like Dawkins called a hair metal, but you're gonna call George Lynch a hair metal guitar player?
Yeah,
the dude smokes 99% of all guitar players out there. He's gonna be reduced to a hair metal guitar player? Fuck that shit. He's a great heavy metal guitar player.
Yeah.
So there's glam metal, like the Poison stuff, and
right,
and people that were wearing makeup and stuff. There's just regular hard rock. So anyway. I've been re-listening to some bands like, LA Guns, and I'm not sure if you ever heard of a band called Tora Tora, back in the 80s.
Yeah, I bought their album, but, they're not one of the bands I would try to reestablish in my life, so.
To check out. I think the guitar player was kind of a bluesy, they're from New Orleans, so it's kind of a little bit of a bluesy take on hard rock. There's a lot of bands doing that at the time, but the singer I thought was fantastic, and I think that first record, Surprise Attack, every single record was great. Anyway, I would love to do a podcast where we talk about metal, not like Dio, Scorpions, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, heavy metal, or Motorhead.
Hard rock, man.
Hard rock. Yeah, and really just kind of go over and just shout out a bunch of bands that we liked and maybe albums and talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many other, and by the way, we'll get into grunge. We could get into a little bit of rap and some other types of music, which Dirty certainly have a better knowledge or history of that, but I've got some, especially back in the day, like 80s and 90s. So anyway, we're going to do some other types of music here because we're such music lovers.
Yeah.
Just to give you guys a heads up for that. All right, so let's get into the rest of our show here. I think we'll probably have a little bit of a time to give a few bands like honorable mention and maybe go through very quickly the spin list of top 30. All right. Dirty, what do you got for your number 5? This is the top 5. This is the biggest of the big of thrash metal. Who's your number 5 band?
Probably Slayer.
Okay.
Good band. Super controversial for some people. They're just, I see them live with you. I think every time I've seen Slayer, it's been with you. So, just real dark. Probably the only band that's like literally seeing them live, it just, kind of doubles their intensity. All their shit's wild. Like their lyrics and the music, it's the perfect soundtrack to the apocalypse. Not to take away from what Scott Ian said. He said basically the same thing, but it's like the lyrics are fucking, dark and raw and it's all this shit. Like in my opinion, it's like from Angel of Death to Seasons in the Abyss. When I heard them, it took me a while to get into them just because it's like what I did here. I was like, man, that's just fucked up. But I did, and I appreciate, Dave Lombardo is probably hands down one of my favorite drummers of all time. Still met the guy, really nice. But yeah, they're just wild and just intense, and it's just the lyrics, and they're like AC/DC, where it's like guaranteed something about Satan, something about Nazi Germany or the Nazis, and serial killers. So it's just kind of the funny format, but recipe, but that's their thing, and that's what they were making records off of for so many years. But yeah, great stuff.
So I mentioned with Metallica that I'm not a big fan of Kirk Hammett. Can you, along with these bands, it's the negative and the positive. Do you feel comfortable speaking to some things that you don't like about Slayer?
Oh yeah, I just, I could go on. Like, there's a lot of stuff, but I appreciate them. Appreciate the music, and like they, you can find elements of them in other music, especially hip hop. Public Enemy, Rick Rubin sampled them for one of their songs. It was actually a really good song. They're just, you can mismatch them with punk. You can mismatch them with hardcore punk. And they have like that street edge. I mean, I don't sound like an old person, but they do. They sound like they're more in touch with like reality and the streets, than a lot of like bands or artists. So, then, and they always blow me away with who likes them. And, Ice-T loves Slayer. I'm sure I think they've interacted with like Public or, NWA back in the day. Let's see, maybe the Ghetto Boys. I'm not sure, but, and then you see him referenced by Jello Biafra, who's a punk singer. He's mentioned. Skaters. They're big in the skate scene. You had one guy who played on their name. His name was Spare, so his logo was Spare the Skater Kid, and they had a play on the album for album cover of, I think, well, it's their logo, the pentagram and the swords and all that, and he did a play on that, and just man, their egos, like, I had a friend of mine tell me he met them and said they're a little rough to talk to. They weren't very friendly, and they've been known to be dicks, like Kerry King. Al Jorgensen was talking about they were playing the mastermind behind Ministry, said Kerry King came in, I think he acknowledged them, and Kerry King grabbed like beer and then made a mess or something and just walked out of the room. But Ministry, Al Jorgensen played a fucking Slayer riff on one of his tracks. Just One Fix, and so it's just kind of like, they're kind of the real deal. At least, I would say at least, Kerry King and Jeff Henneman were like the like stone cold, like, dudes. Like, there was no fucking around and joking, and, they're not like that. Like, surprisingly, especially Kerry King, I was impressed with the interview he did with Bruce Dickinson, and talking about, the United States' lack of, how the average person in the United States doesn't have much, interest, or doesn't understand world politics, just all the, in the, being realistic about playing in Slayer and playing that kind of music for a long time, because physically it puts a toll on your body, and they played intense every fucking show. So it's just, I don't know. There's so much to say about it, but yeah, Slayer's. I have a like dislike thing with Slayer because I love the music, but some of the shit they're just kind of fucked up. So I don't know.
Well, I want you to,
This is kind of
if you're comfortable talking about it, because I think it's interesting. I was wondering if you wanted to talk about the dislike part of it relating to heavy metal and its association with Nazi history, Nazi
right.
propaganda, Nazi collectibles. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked about this, in length before, and I think it's an interesting part of the conversation. Do you want to speak about your feelings about how they maybe haven't gone against Nazism because of the association with some of the songs they've written? It has been,
right.
I think, people, certainly some of the listeners, I don't think that Henneman feels this way, and he's spoken about it because he wrote Angel of Death and, a lot of these things about Nazi Germany, but that they condone it or that they think it's cool or something. Do you think that they should have corrected their fans and said, by the way, like, this isn't what we're talking about? Or,
I mean, Tom Araya, I saw a documentary with a friend of mine, and they kind of just make light of it and how it's just a thing. And, I've done research and looked up a lot of pictures from back in the day, and Henneman has tons of like SS shit, like the famous skull, and the tongue-in-cheek shit. That's the phrase they used to use back in the day. I guess Henneman was, I think he was friends with Lemmy and Ozzy, and all those guys collect Nazi stuff. They all make like really interesting, excuses for it. It's just, and then, the biggest irony is Tom Araya, like they used to talk, and make songs, lots of songs about like how religion is fucked up, Christianity or the Catholic Church and born again preachers and, all that. But, then I think, I read somewhere that Tom Araya is like a born again Christian and he's really conservative. He's a Trumper and all this. So it's just funny how people over the years change, and it goes from like art repeating, what is that expression? Art repeating.
Art imitating life or life imitating art.
So it's like, when I read that, and I downloaded an article, it's like, now they've become the life part of, again, instead of the artist, reflecting on our society. Now it's like, with that, he becomes it. And, this is a broader thing within metal, especially, like every time you go to a Slayer show, I've been, not just Slayer, but I saw, we went to Ozfest and, I've always seen racist people or Nazis there doing like Sieg Heil. I even went to Rammstein with Soulfly, and, you see like bigots because they don't understand. They think of Rammstein because they're Germans that they're fascists, but that's the gimmick. It's like the play on it. But with Slayer, and then the whole time, it's like it's been one of their things. And I understand talking about fucked up things, and because they talk about serial killers and Satanism and all this, and but with that, it's like it's like there could have been any effort to go, we're talking about it because it's fucked up. Like this is one of the most fucked up moments of in history, and it's horrible. And but we don't condone it. We're just talking about how fucked up it is, and like there's not a lot of events like the Holocaust, and on top of it, it's like when people collect serial killer shit, it's like you got to feel for the victims. I mean, like I've seen elderly Jewish people with the tattoos on the arms, and and it's just like, if you don't believe in the Holocaust, you're a fucking lunatic. Like that shit was real. And, you know, you break it down and you know, it's just part of this bigger thing. And whether you intend to or not, your actions still speak louder than what you say, or don't say for that matter. And after a while, it's like, you know, like I said, it becomes like you go, because how many times are you going to talk about this in different aspects of it? And then you draw a crowd of like Nazis, as neo-Nazis to your show, and, you know, there's no emphasis or, you know, emphasis on trying to like be inclusive to other groups of people, other races of people, other, you know, all these fans. And, you know, Slayer shows, I swear to God, like the scariest thing is the audience, man. It's like, you know, I've been in a mosh pit there, which was fucking scary. It's like everything you can imagine of like the intensity of metal. And, you know, and it's like, you know, it just flies after a while. And it's, I understand, you know, Jeff Henneman's thing was, you know, his dad was in World War II, and I had a friend explain to me about kids of veterans, you know, especially from World War II, and my friend explained it like, you know, if you're seeing memorabilia, that means like that's from a dead Nazi, and that just shows that they're dead. And, you know, but it, you know, to me, it's just, it's like, it's a touchy subject because it's like, you know, you know, a lot of like Jewish people, when they could come here, came here, enlisted and joined, you know, became citizens and went back and fought the Nazis. And, you know, it's like a thing. I mean, Rick Rubin, I'd read an article and he, you know, he would get into it with them because he's Jewish, and it was probably a really touchy subject. But, you know, that's the thing. I mean, it's a thing within the industry, you know, the music industry and the entertainment industry, like just that specific, like Nazi memorabilia, you know, it's all these little things. And it's just, I understand, you know, you don't care, not you, but I understand a person is just like, you know, to each their own. But, man, it's just, it means a little more, I think, nowadays, because there's more of a heightened, more openness of fascism in general, you know. So I don't, you know, so I didn't, you know, I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but it's a thing, you know. When you talk about Slayer, it's that and Satanism, you know, because that's the thing they've been playing on and using. That's their gimmick, and it's like, okay, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have listened to Slayer all through. I mean, I've listened to every record. I mean, they did cut the Satan stuff. I think they left with the 80s. Kerry King, who really did more of the Satan stuff, jumped on the anti-religion and started talking politics and some other more socially viable subjects after the 80s. One thing is that with that, it is a touchy subject, and I know that I showed my father the lyrics who fought in Vietnam, and he was like, wow, he goes, that stuff means means a lot to a lot of people. The reason why I'm saying this is that when Henneman first came out, they said, boy, like, you're getting banned and all that, like, Columbia wouldn't release their record. They had to switch to Geffen at the last minute, and they said, we're not going to release this. And I saw an interview with Henneman, and they're like, why are people all up in arms? And he's like, well, look, I'm not, the way that I write is kind of like a news source. Like, if you turn on the news, you have news and you have opinions. Fox is opinions, news is news. So he's like, I'm really just trying to give people the story, and let them make up their own minds. I heard him say, like, hopefully you oppose this. He goes, I thought that was really kind of a given. But and he does go more into South to Heaven, Behind the Crooked Cross, is really a more specific song about the people that were going along with Nazi Germany and about forced to fight behind it. That's more of an anti-Nazi song, I think, than certainly Angel of Death was describing the most horrific things done by Josef Mengele. The one thing that Henneman said, though, after Rain and Blood, he's like, look, everyone's getting all up in arms. It's just a song. And I think that it's not. You know what I mean? It's much deeper than that. And when you invoke that kind of history that kind of graphic images that are being related through language, then it's more than just a song, good and bad. Good because I learned things in the song that I really didn't even know before. That Mengele lived kind of a happy life through South America, skirting through Brazil and going up to Argentina and different things. Was hidden out for a while and got to live on the beach for the rest of his days until maybe 67 or something like that. So the ending line is something about rancid angel of death is flying free. Well, rancid isn't exactly the terminology he's using when he described it isn't flattering. If you're rancid, if he's describing Joseph Mengele as being rancid, I mean, you shouldn't have to hit people over the head with the fucking message. You either get it or you don't. I'm smart enough to get it. You're smart enough to get it. Stupid people will read anything and turn it into their own description of what it is and totally bastardize the subject and the meaning behind it. I think it does. Some people don't like to describe their songs. Now, maybe he had more of a responsibility to based on the subject matter, but some people don't even like to tell you to this day. I mean, what's that song? You're So Vain by that girl. They're like, who is the person? Who is it? Is it Mick Jagger? Is it Warren Beatty?
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not gonna say who it is.
I know.
Right. And she's like, I'm not gonna say who it is. That's my secret to keep, and you have to figure it out. People don't like to have to describe the song after they write it. Like, look, this is what it is. Like, if you're a shithead about it, but at the same time, it is part of the heavy metal culture that all these people, as we said in the beginning of this podcast, are writing about some pretty intense. They're not talking about just partying and drinking beer. They may be doing that afterwards, but these songs are about something much deeper. And unfortunately, some of the heavy metal audience are not the right audience to properly decipher what they're talking about and recite that into what it's about. So, I mean, I could certainly, and you and I talked about that, where I'm like, well, hey, look, the way you described it is like if you're taking something from a dead soldier, it's like, hey, I'm taking this because it proves that we won out and you didn't win. And here's a relic of your failed attempt to take over the world. And when people drink and glorify it, kind of like drinking that we won. You know what I mean? And one of those kind of things. Now, I get all that stuff, and Henneman doesn't have to describe it to me. There's just a lot of, I've noticed that about Slayer, that a lot of not a lot, I don't know. I mean, there's certainly a fan base of them and any other massive heavy metal band talking about these kinds of subjects that don't interpret the lyrics properly or really pluck out the hate parts. But it's like people that read the Bible and they miss the whole message of love from Jesus, and they go to the part about man should not lay with other man, and everything that they live for is based off of making sure that gay marriage is illegal, or talking about how what kind of a sin that is, because they're cherry picking what they want to cherry pick out to feed their hate rather than take the message as a whole. Anyway, I thought that was a great segment. Thank you for sharing your feelings about that. I thought it was an important part of not just Slayer, but heavy metal and speed metal in general. Right. And it's a part of why, whether it's satanic influenced lyrics or some other things, that, Slayer's been put in that category of offensive. So, okay, let's move on from, that was your number 5 selection, Slayer. My number 5 is Pantera. In the 80s, they were not a thrash metal band. They were just a heavy metal band doing Ozzy covers. They turned into one of the heaviest, best thrash metal bands of all time, doing heavy amounts of speed, too. I mean, their first record, Cowboys from Hell, was more of a heavy metal record. It had some Slayer riffs in there, had some heavy riffs, had the art of shredding. They shredded. They did thrash metal. Strength Beyond Strength opens up Vulgar Display of Power, is thrash to the core. It's super fast. It's got great riffs. He's talking about legalizing marijuana. He talks about a lot of things I don't agree with. Man, Phil and Sullivan, you want to talk about, you don't have to misinterpret what he says when he comes out into a show and gives the white power, it says white power. I mean, the guy is a fucking fool. If you see him in an interview, he just contradicts himself left and right and really leaves a bad taste in my mouth as far as, kind of a scumbag.
Right.
But he's an incredibly talented, singer, songwriter. The Abbott brothers, Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul are two of the most amazing musicians in heavy metal history. The tightness, they took that to a whole new level in the 90s. Like their song A New Level, which is a great song off of Vulgar Display of Power. What they did in the 90s pushed everything from the 80s. It tightened it up as tight as it could possibly get. It got as they just were incredibly musically talented, gifted. Some of the greatest guitar solos you ever heard from Dimebag Darrell. I think they got heavier and faster as they went along. They hit that groove metal thing too, which was, they did a combination. They would do slower groove metal songs. They would do faster speed metal songs too. And they took it all the way through the rest of the decade, and I think had an amazing decade in the 90s. They were the preeminent band, thrash. I have one other 90s thrash band in here, but they were the most popular, preeminent kings of metal, thrash metal, heavy metal, groove metal in the 1990s. So my number 5 band is Pantera. And if you want to talk about Pantera, Dirty, you can. Otherwise, we can move on to number 4 if you want to.
We witnessed it as, we saw him at Ozfest, and Rune, he shortened Slayer's set. The guy is a walking contradiction. He's a fascist. I saw an interview with him on MTV wearing a South African, fascist apartheid symbol that only fascists would know of. I had to look it up. It's just probably the most openly racist redneck dude in metal. I just the Dimebag Darrell, and I don't know if he, they're from the South, so I don't really know if the guy at the time didn't realize that his guitars were the symbol of the Civil War. Actually, not the Civil War, after the, during Jim Crow era of lynching and shit, was the flag that, the South inherited and, white people pressed upon it. We're playing that shit and all that, Southern, one of their albums is Southern culture. What's that?
Southern Trend, the great Southern Trendkill.
Right. So, and there's another song where Phil Anselmo is in his other band, or that other slow metal band, talking about Southern pride and all this. And, and he was scared after Katrina. I guess I read this article, he was scared after Katrina to show himself in a bigger urban area, because he's paranoid that somebody black would attack him or somebody, it's just, even Slayer said that he was just over the fucking top, ridiculous.
He's not very popular. Phil is not very popular in the thrash metal world.
This is now.
With a lot of different people. And to be honest with you, I have heard, I don't know for sure, as far as sources are concerned, I've heard about them not being the most racially open band. Even when you're talking about the Abbott brothers, I've heard that they're kind of like good old boys, and they come from Texas.
Yeah.
They're not really, the bass player, what a slithery,
Right.
Go ahead.
Rex. No, I'd say Rex.
Rex.
He just looks like a trucker who does speed, so I don't know.
He does look like he's doing Black Beauties on the road. And when I hear that guy talk, when he talked about Phil versus the Abbott brothers, the guy was just playing two sides of what a spineless piece of shit that guy seems like. First of all, to stick with Phil, even though Phil is just basically out of his mind. He realized that was his meal ticket.
Right.
He's just like, I don't really have a lot of respect for that guy. But look, there's nothing, I can't take anything away from the band. I listened to Vulgar Display of Power
Oh yeah.
and Cowboys from Hell a billion times back in the day.
Everybody did.
Some of the great works, but as far as guys outside of the music, I don't know if I met him, if I would like him too much, to be honest with you. I don't know.
I wouldn't approach that guy. I don't know.
No.
I listen to them, dude. I mean, I'll add to what you're saying. I mean, musically, it's like the same thing with Slayer, but they reinvented the whole genre of just 90s sound where everything's like slow the fuck down, just drop D, just like just, like you could see that, Phil sings and like he's a hardcore singer. One of his biggest influences, Black Flag. And then he can sing like melodic stuff and soft stuff. He's very talented. I'll give him that, and Dimebag Darrell's guitar playing for the 90s, because that whole emphasis of guitar shredding really died out after grunge, but he kept it going as a mainstay in the format of their songwriting, and it wasn't cheesed out. It actually went with it. I mean, it's just, yeah, man, they're fucking a great band musically. I love Vulgar Slave. I listened to that thing in the fucking dirt, man. But I just didn't know anything about them, and then I'd start to hear things and read shit and like metal magazines, and and MTV's talking about you in a negative way. It's like, oh shit, But yeah, other than that, yeah, I mean, for a 90s band, they're the heaviest. Like they're the fucking, and they're popular. They are a success.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. The guitar player's family, Daryl's family, forbade him from going to the memorial.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he's not allowed there. He's just like, the guy's fucking. He is a fascist. Like he's doing meth and fucking being a dope fiend and like just being so intense all the time, and it's like,
And being proud of it. The thing is, it's like, it's one thing if you almost die from a drug overdose. He acted like it was a badge of honor to him. Hey, you can't fuck with me. I almost died. Fuck you. That's your problem. You're the one who overdosed on heroin, who decided to become a heroin addict. I mean, I know he was having back problems and stuff like that, but he acts like he's so inside himself that he thinks that what he is like a big grandiose achievement. Like he's just he's a fucking singer. Big deal, dude. Get over yourself. He's the kind of a guy that just like, when I see him, he's just so drenched in his own achievements that it just makes me sick. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to, we got, that was my number 5. Wait, one last thing. You technically don't think that they're thrash metal, though, right? When we're describing thrash metal.
No, like I said, I think they change things and not really thrash. Like they have, elements of it, but they're just, I just call it metal, like 90s metal. Just that, that's what I'd say their genre would be, is, that's what they would fall on. Just heavy, just fucking, just slow, fucking,
Okay, so what do you got for number 4 for your band?
All right. Number 4. It's a double header. But both, for me as a thrash fan, Testament and Motorhead.
Motorhead for thrash metal?
Yeah, Orgasmatron is like, it's like Motorhead is actually kind of bluesy, and, very rock, and like punk stuff, but, Orgasmatron's heavy as fuck, and just the rhythm, the guitars heavy.
But is it fast?
It can be. not as fast as like, you know, Slayerning, but they change it up too, and you know, they're kind of like you know, have inspired thrash in a way, especially for Metallica, the way they play, and that created, you know, that, you know, so it's kind of like when you hear Orgasmatron, especially the song Orgasmatron, that's fucking metal as fuck. It's about war.
It's definitely metal. It's not thrash, but it's drop D tuning heavy metal with great lyrics.
So,
but anyway, okay. And then you also you said Testament?
Yeah. Another, I think they're from the Bay Area, or maybe that's where they got started.
Yes.
Another Bay Area band. Fucking Practice What You Preach was a great album. And when I listen to it, it's like Exodus, and I heard a lot of these albums within the same, like, time span, because I started to smoke weed. So, like, I just was like, I gotta do this, and, you know, and I started being rebellious, so I was like, yeah, I want to hear this. So I caught up on all those bands, but Testament was another band. It was like, then they're talking about the environment, shady ass preachers, you know, hatred, like, and they're also like the native band. So it was like the first, Native American rock, you know, rock stars, like, openly, you know, like, and metal, and fucking really good. Alex Skolnick is he's a great technical guitar player, but the rhythm, like, and the fucking time changes, and like they can switch it up. Chuck Billy's got a great fucking thrash metal voice. Lyrics are fucking great. Like, I still think about it, you know. The ballad is about, you know, it's about suicide, and, you know, we love you as a human being, you know, like, try to fight through depression. I mean, dude, I could go on, like, but it's one of my favorite albums, you know, favorite thrash metal albums, favorite metal albums. It's just deep, fucking, great rhythm. The rhythm guitar player is great, just solid. Like, it's just good. It's fucking good.
I hear you. Testament is, great. We get, I'm going to go on to my number 4 is my other 90s band. They technically came out in the 80s, but they personified their sound and, harnessed their sound, I think, the best in the 1990s at Sepultura. Arise was the first record that I got. I heard Dead Embryonic Cell, the song Arise, Desperate Cry, Altered State. I mean, it's just a really good record. It's this, you know, they did Beneath the Remains before that, and Schizophrenia, where they did a cover of Orgasmatron. They, to me, in the 90s, changed thrash metal the same way that Pantera did, in a much different way. They obviously are from South America. They added a sort of, I think they're from Sao Paulo, which, you know, it's weird. I see Sao Paulo on our list. Well, it breaks down our analytics, our dashboard of who's listening to the show. And some people from Sao Paulo are downloading our episodes, the political ones that we were talking about. Anyway, they're talking about politics in South America. KSID is their crowning achievement. It's, they did the Keola song where it's just this, I don't think it's not a tabla, it's not an Indian drum, but they basically play this little tom drum type thing to an acoustic guitar, super heavy, deep, sounding song. It's an instrumental. But KSAD is a fantastic record all the way up and down. Every single song is great. The cover of The Hunt at the end is awesome, about this guy tracking down a South American drug kingpin because these days they're putting fentanyl and everything, which is killing people like crazy. I guess there's some guy in South America that was putting stuff in to strengthen up drugs, that was killing people, and this guy created an army to go and track this guy down in the streets and drag him out of his the restaurant he owned or the club that he owned and beat him to death in the streets. They really revolutionized the 1990s for heavy metal, for speed metal, for thrash metal. Roots, Bloody Roots is a fucking great album as well. Unfortunately, they broke up after that. The singer formed Soulfly, if you've ever heard that. And then Sepultura started to wane as the years went on, and a few more members quit. I think one of the greatest drummers in the history of music. I put him up there with like Lombardo and the guy for the Police, like Stuart Copeland is an amazing drummer. I think that guy's great. Neil Peart and stuff. I mean, the guy is just amazing. In fact, let me get. We're gonna have to shorten this up a little bit for the rest of the time here to make time, but I have to say the guy's name, the drummer's name.
Igor Cavalera.
Hey, there you go, Igor Cavalera. And his brother, of course, was the singer, the rhythm guitar player and singer. Great. Andreas Kisser, I believe, is the Kaiser. Maybe this Kisser is the lead guitar player. He's great too. Anyway, great band. They changed sound. They are absolutely a metamorphosis in the genre. That's my number 4 pick of best thrash metal bands of all time.
Okay, number 3, Nuclear Assault, and I also have Sepultura. Nuclear Assault, great band. I would put they're thrash, but like they're more hardcore than thrash though. Like their shit's just like intense, raw. Lyrics is great. The subjects are great. Like they're all about fucking thinking and reporting on what they see. I mean, every album is just intense. The bass player, in my opinion, is one of my favorite bass players of all time, Dan Ilker. Just fucking an amazing bass player. He uses a fuzz pedal, so it's like his shit's all distorted. Just great singer, screaming at you, telling you wake up. I don't know, just raw, intense. One of the best thrash metal bands ever. Just continue to stay the course and play and with that same focus. Sepultura, I'm just going to add like what you said. I heard Pantera, they're great. Then I heard Sepultura, and it's like they did that shit, and their shit's like raw, like, and it's all like intense, but it's like rhythmic because of the Latin influence, the Brazilian influence, the tribal influence, and they inspired like that aspect of metal, you know, that happened is you'd see other bands start to like incorporate, you know, different weapons, different instruments. Wasn't cheesed out. Their acoustic shit is like solid. It's rhythmic. Sounds great. They were, you know, probably one of the first bands in metal to really have a consistent subject matter of politics, because like Brazil is like super political. You know, you had the fascist takeover I believe in the 70s and 80s, and they were living, you know, coming out of that. And not even now to this day, Brazil, well, they have a good president now, but the previous president was like in competition with Trump.
Trump of the tropics.
Right, and the guy is even more flamboyant, bombastic and ridiculous. But anyway, you know, they were talking about like, you know, Territory was my first favorite hit because it's like the video just talks about war, talks about like Israel back then, you know, in the Palestinian conflict. All in the video and the lyrics, you can hear all this stuff. It's a news report, and it opened my eyes and made me want to understand like politics more. And you know, they were just different. They were cool and they were very like metal, but they were like more or less, they were more punk rock about it with like their lyrics. They're inspired by the Dead Kennedys. You know, they like, even like they, you know, played with or they're friends with like the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in the day, like Nirvana. They went on tour with so many different groups. You know, and then so Chaos CD is an amazing album. I think it's like you know, it's like, I listen to it today in this period. It's like a soundtrack for right now. Arise is just like taking thrash and speed metal and then like fucking take it a step further with time changes and like Max Cavalera like will never be a pop hit like singer. He's just screaming. He probably has like problems with his throat because he's never soft about anything. His shit is just pretty much, you know, always been like that. You know, intelligent, keeps it metal, keeps it to the people and to the streets. You know, he's just met the guy, really little, really nice. You know, like just the opposite of some rock stars with attitude. You know, I met James Hetfield. That guy was like kind of subtly rude. Max Cavalera is shaking hands. I'm like, thanks, man. You're great. You know, if I had like you know how there's, what's that fantasy football shit? If there was fantasy metal bands, like you could do that, I would be like him and Dave Lombardo and Scott Ian, and probably Dan Lilker for bass. And like, that would be like my ideal, like, metal punk band, you know, heavy metal band.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you substitute Dave Lombardo with Charlie Benante and add in whoever the guy who was the singer who technically, I guess, had a problem with people not speaking English back in the day, you got SOD, which was Anthrax with Dan Lilker. Killer,
I mean,
thrash metal record.
That is, to me, in my opinion, it's a metal band, metal album, but I consider way more like hardcore punk. Like everything is with their whole joke of like playing a song for like 50 seconds. You're dead, you know, like one riff, and that's another level of, that's gonna be on the punk list for me. So yeah.
March of the
SOD, dude.
March of the SOD. That was, I remember that on,
Headbangers Ball.
Headbangers Ball, which by the way, I checked out, the other day, MTV has Metal Mayhem. I did not watch it, but I think it's a metal show that's on Saturday nights that's akin to the Headbangers Ball. Of course, anytime you mention Dan Lilker, why don't you think for yourself? Yeah. You can also mention Anthrax because he was the original bassist with Anthrax. I believe he played and wrote some of the songs on Armed and Dangerous. There was a big, different singer then. That wasn't Joey Belladonna, but all right. So that's two bands you got there. That is number 3. My number 3 band is once I give number 3, I think it's pretty easy to see what my number 1 and 2 are. But number 3 is Testament. When you talk about the first record, which is good, in fact, I gotta get them up on Wikipedia here. So the first record, the Legacy. That's okay. So the first one is Legacy. Good, over the wall, very good. The run that they went on. You're talking about the Legacy. And I love them all. I love the Legacy. The New Order is my second favorite. I fucking love that. The Trial by Fire is amazing. They started with they were really great at the clean channel guitar. Eric Peterson is the unsung hero of that band. He writes the majority of the rhythms. He wrote Practice What You Preach, and all the rhythms you hear, he pretty much wrote most of them. He's great at flamenco guitar, which you hear. The ballad is more of like a classical guitar that he goes back and forth with Alex Skolnick, but the beginning of Souls of Black, which is From the Sky, Eyes from the Sky, I'll get onto that song, starts out with this amazing flamenco Spanish style guitar. The guy is so varied with his influences. He's so underrated. When people talk about thrash metal, especially with Testament, they talk about Chuck Billy, big dude, awesome dude. I got to be right up against the stage when I saw him on the Low Tour. He's one of the coolest, one of the just one of the thrash metal heroes, really. Alex Skolnick is a lot of school. He's a lot of Satriani. He's a lot of.
Oh yeah.
But man, is he fast with his solos? He does melodic solos too. He's not just
Right.
speed. Eric Peterson is, with James Hetfield, the greatest rhythm guitar player in thrash metal history. The guy is amazing, and Testament has not gone anywhere. Their biggest record that they released was 10 years ago. Went to like number 10 or number 12 in the charts. So I was so happy to see that they're a band that should have blown up bigger than they did. I mentioned that with Metal Church, and there's other bands that could have sold many more records. After Practice What You Preach, which is a very good one. Sins of Omission, great song. And also, God, off of that record, It's a Nightmare Coming Back to You. This quick little 2-minute thrash metal song is friggin' bitchin', written by Alex Skolnick. And then if you move on to Souls of Black is one of their greatest songs. It's great. I was never a fan of Louis Clemente, their drummer, so they switched drummers during Low. But underrated records, because they keep going after that. In 1992, The Ritual is a fantastic record. So Many Lies is the heaviest song they've ever done, with the best lead guitar by Alex Skolnick that I've ever heard him do, which he left after that record. Return to Serenity is a great, clean channel, fabulous, puts you in such a mood. It's such a different sounding song than other thrash metal songs. Move on to my absolute favorite Testament album is Low, 1984. Drop D tuning. Chuck Billy kind of changed to death metal vocals a little bit with his roar, roar. He could get so low with his growl.
Right.
He did it, but you can still hear the lyrics. If you go through the whole damn thing, Legions in Hiding about child abuse is one of the most intense biopics on kids going through child abuse. And that really resonated with me. That Hail Mary is a fantastic, awesome, the whole album is so tremendous. Hail Mary, the song Low is probably their catchiest song they ever released. Trail of Tears, I guess. Chuck Billy about his family heritage, talking about his native family heritage. I believe that was actually, that was on Low.
That's historic. That's like a big event. Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson, Trump's hero. Trump's hero is one of the greatest mass murderers in U.S. history. That doesn't surprise me. Right. But yeah, every song all the way down to, you want to talk about a thrash metal lyric on Low. The song Ride Onto, Ride Through You. The song starts off with, don't you know what to do anymore until you've made love to the spike. And it's about people that kick themselves in the teeth and people that can't get it together and people that make the wrong decisions all the time. They bring you down with them. It's a tremendously heavy, awesome song. What else? Chasing Fear, great riff to that one. Shades of War, super heavy, awesome. I really think James Murphy from Death plays guitar on this record, replaces Alex Who. I swear to God, you hear the leads on this record and you're saying Alex Who. I really didn't, I welcomed the change when I heard it. Not to mention the fact that Louis Clemente, who was the king of single bass and thrash metal, which some of my favorite thrash, you gotta kick out some double bass. You have to have some double bass.
Yeah.
So John Tempesta, who was a White Zombie, he went on to drum with White Zombie, drummed on this record. Tremendous drummer. The lineup they had with that Low record was fantastic. Now after that, it dropped off a little bit for me. As far as Testament's history, you can go to Demonic. I did get that record. Demonic is basically death metal. And it starts off with a countdown: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6, 6. And it goes right into this totally heavy death metal song. And
that's with Dave Lombardo, right? On drums?
Yeah, I do believe that he let me see. It's got Glenn Alvelas from Forbidden.
Oh, okay.
James Murphy. And, wait, who plays drum? Well, Gene Hoglan from Dark Angel.
Oh, wow.
But I know that, yes, he has drummed on some, Dave Lombardo has drummed on some Testament records. Huge fan of the band. They're really the unsung heroes, I think, of thrash metal because
right.
I just think when we talk about Metallica and Megadeth, their whole career was not thrash metal. They had a period of time that they played thrash metal.
Right.
And I'm not saying Megadeth or Metallica never went back to thrash metal after Symphony of Destruction, after Enter Sandman. They did at points. But Testament just kept pushing it heavier and heavier.
Right.
And, you know, I don't like Demonic as much as I like the New Order or as much as the Ritual, but it's still a good record. Anyway, number 3 to me, Testament, one of the greatest bands of all time. I still love them. I still listen to them all the time. Dirty, we got it. We got the top 2. Who are the top 2 thrash metal bands? Let's start with your number 2.
Anthrax.
Anthrax, okay.
Yeah. Same thing. They're really great. I heard Among the Living on the radio, then I bought it. The fucking rhythm, just like, Scott Ian is an amazing rhythm guitar player. Like, his shit is memorable. Yes. The switches, the heaviness, the grittiness, like, the production made it where you could hear everything. They let everybody cut loose and fucking go at it. Charlie Benetti's great. They are for like timing, they're one of the epitomes of like thrash metal, where to me, like thrash metal, like is like you can go from like just playing a rhythm and then you'll jump into a really fast rhythm in like seconds and then come back and just switch it up, and like they're great with the timing. Lyrics are great. Thought provoking, like more serious, they would talk about real shit, real clever, like the lyrics are super clever. They were big into Stephen King, so you get to hear about that. Politics, Joey, who's the first guy? The Joey Benetti?
Belladonna.
No. Belladonna. So I guess he's part native,
right.
And so they did the song Indians, and it's like nobody was doing that back in the 80s, so it was nice to, it was a cool song and it had depth to it, and but they're very lighthearted dudes. Like they played off everything pretty goofy. Their logo is like a bald-headed dude with a mustache. I actually had that toy. So the Knot Man, like that shit was classic. Like all the shit, they're cool. Like they're deep into like hardcore punk, because like they were like music friends with like Agnostic Front, and not COC, Cro-Mags, and Youth of Today, because they play a lot of the same clubs. They play CBGBs with those bands, so they you could hear a lot of that. And then they're also like heavy metal nerds, where Among the Living, they went on tour with Iron Maiden just as much as Metallica, I think. Also, they toured with Whitesnake. They weren't pompous, they weren't like tight. They were like cool. They were very gracious and appreciative of just of their experience. So they're a great band. Like I said, I listened to their shit up until, after like in the 90s and then 2000s, it was kind of like hit or miss. I just have to say my only criticism is like, I wasn't feeling Danny Spitz's like, of like a solo like shredder guy, and to be honest, like I think they should have got a different singer. But other than that, fucking great. Like one of my favorite bands. Like, well, I've always had that confliction of just like, man, what would they sound like with, I don't know, fucking Max Cavalier or fucking somebody else. But yeah,
Yeah. Love the song they did with with Public Enemy. Bring the
yeah,
Noise. They've done lots
yeah.
of different. They kind of fuse
They hated that.
rap. What's that?
Well, after that happened, it was like, after then you had like the rap rock bands or rap metal bands. Like Scott Ian hated that. It's like they were doing that just out of like their love for Public Enemy because they actually were friends with them, but it's like they didn't want to have a genre created and like have
But
a bunch
that's
of
where I was going with that. Is that
oh
it
okay
did
yeah
influence the rap metal genre, which
right
positive or negative, I guess you decide. I'm not a fan of rap metal. Exactly.
right.
I mean, metal with a little hip hop like Korn or something like that. I really like that because it introduces different beats and different sounds and stuff like that. But really, the big thing about that song is like I just really anything with Chuck D in it, I love his vocals
Yeah.
and that the way that he raps, the force
Right.
of his voice. And
Right.
what he's saying, it just kind of gets the blood boiling. The same way that
Right.
thrash metal gets your masculinity thriving and just sort of like makes you want to sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say get violent, but I would say get you puppy chested and makes you, just makes you want to do something physical, or it could make you want to get up on a stage and sing about whatever you have to sing about or whatever.
Yeah.
But the same feeling I get when I listen to Slayer when I'm like, I get all revved up listening to it, it just drives me wild. And Chuck D can do the same thing. He's really a special musician and a great, whatever you want, a rapper, vocalist, whatever. He's someone who's got something to say, who knows how to say it, and it's as simple as that.
I agree.
So my number 2 band, I'm actually going to cut these guys kind of short because we're going to do them in our next episode. It's Metallica is number 2 to me, not number 1. I think I almost put them number 3. I don't know. These top 5 that I have are kind of interchangeable. With Metallica, this is controversial. I'm not a huge Kill 'Em All fan. I'm really not. I mean, Ride the Lightning is, I think, their first great album, although they have elements of just heavy metal to them as well. And I'll tell you what, too, when Lars Ulrich started out, he was kind of a shitty drummer. He was not up to par with the rest of the thrash metal industry. Even Mustaine said that. He's like, I was writing Kill 'Em All. He's like, I would have written more intricate stuff than I ended up writing later, but Lars couldn't play to it. He just wasn't talented enough yet. Really, the first album where I heard the whole band kind of together was Master of Puppets. Ride the Lightning is great. It's a fucking seminal piece in threat. I just a lot of their stuff. I think like Master of Puppets sounds thrashy to me.
Oh yeah, it's like
Ride the Lightning to me is a little more kind of like heavy metal mixed with, again, I think Lars' drumming kind of holds him back, even though there's great songs in there. Master of Puppets is one of the greatest albums of all time, no matter what the genre. I still listen to it all the time. It's an incredible, I mean, whether it's Damage Incorporated, Battery, The Thing That Should Not Be is one of the heaviest fucking songs I've ever heard. That is really Kirk Hammett soloing at his best when he does that tripped out whammy bar solo. To that, I love that song. I love Sanitarium. Disposable Heroes is a Stone Cold classic. Leper Messiah is fucking awesome. Some of the most biting lyrics about religion. What is the line about make a contribution, you'll get a better seat in heaven. And Injustice for All is really heavy, fast, poorly produced and mixed album because there's absolutely no bass in there. They really fucked Jason Newsted on that record.
Man, oh my God.
Yeah, but it is still some great material on there. Blackened is an incredible song. Short as Straw, Harvester of Sorrow, Dyer's Eve, the title track. Eye of the Beholder is one of the greatest, heaviest, is one of the greatest giddy up riffs of all time. And then once you move on to the Black Album, it's a good album. It's just that's not thrash, obviously. So Metallica's got my number 2 spot. Dirty, what do you got for number 2?
what did I say? What is it? I told you, Anthrax.
Oh, sorry. Whoa! So we're up to number one. This is it. The prime
Right.
position in the top 10 thrash metal bands of all time. What is your number one? I wonder.
Metallica.
Exactly.
You kind of just did the intro, but yeah, I have to agree. I first got into them, and they were like when I was a kid, like so it was like '86. I was like getting into skating, and like so I'd see their skateboard ads for their Zorlac skateboard and Thrasher. Then I'd hear them on KNAC, and it just was like they were so good that like I'd heard about them through word of mouth and through, there were no videos. Like that was their big thing, and that was that they were very proud of themselves, and like they were like, we don't need that shit. We don't sell out. Even though you're on like Elektra, but whatever. But they had their integrity, and there, was like the epitome of like thrash metal. Just the changes, the fucking rhythm, the lyrics, fucking tight. Master of Puppets is probably one of the best theme songs. Just heavy, like just crazy guitar playing, like shredding. Cliff Burton it was almost like he was the way he played, and like he stuck out where he was older and he was into like 70s rock, but the way he applied that to the bass was just like insane, and he gave him a heavy, like that, the producer, on that album, like they hooked him up, cause like if it wasn't for his sound, it would be missing like that heavy chunk. And Cliff Burton is like, it's an amazing bass player with his fucking hands. Like, I don't think he picked anything. He played everything with his hands. And, never changed really his look. Like, he looked like they all got like black pants, black shoes, black t-shirts, leather jackets. And Cliff Burton's like, nope, denim jacket, bell-bottom jeans, and maybe like a Misfits t-shirt. And it's amazing, and like very good, just an amazing guitar player, bass player. He passed away, but he was almost like the star.
He was the heart and soul.
He was, but he played bass, like, but you hear Orion, and is it Damage Incorporated, where they switch off, but he was like an essential, member of the band, and he dies on the bus, and that's one of the first things I heard about him. I was going to school, and my mom was taking me and was on the news, and like, rock news. I was like, oh man, that's fucked up. And so, and then fucking, and then I heard Ride the Lightning, and it was so heavy for me, like, it was just like, holy shit, man, this is just fucking insane. Like, this is so intense, like, so heavy. It felt like the earth was shaking, like, it just, the riffs were like, just fucking insane, just fucking so metal. And then, that, I was like, holy fuck. Then, then Garage Days comes out, and it's like bands I'd never heard of. I never heard of the Misfits. I'd heard of them, but I never heard them. And so, hearing that, I'm like, holy shit, like, this shit's intense. And like, it takes another step, another notch of like metal with like faster, jumpier starts, and taking punk and then like just adding more distortion and, just taking it to the next level. And then like, I saw them, for the Monsters of Rock tour, and I go with my mom, and it's like live, it was just like, they were so good live, like so tight. I heard everything, and so I got to see Jason Newsted, and when you're I was at the LA Coliseum, which isn't there anymore. It was so big, and it was like watching like a whole suburb full of people, hang out for the same thing, and it's like I could barely see anybody on stage because we were so far up, but it was like you could hear every fucking thing, and I could hear them like when we were fucking, we got there right after Kingdom Come, because I was like, I don't give a fuck about them. So we get there and like they just had started, and my mom was like tripping out because she couldn't believe like everybody's banging their head and, air guitaring and like, everybody's like, you have people like smoking weed. So we brought a bong in, and the security guard is like taking rips. It's like, holy fuck. And my mom's just like, oh my God. So we get to see them, and they were playing with Van Halen, Doc and Scorpions and Van Halen. All really good, bands, but Metallica, man, was so hot. Like, that was, to me, like, probably, that was like the peak of their genuine, just raw appeal. And then after that, when they put out Injustice for All, then they just continued, and it was just like, then they just became like Iron Maiden and just fucking toured, playing with everybody. They played with the Cult, Queensryche. My ex-girlfriend went to that show, but once Injustice for All came out, it was like the epitome of like thrash metal, had every element you could think of, and then the lyrics were like deep, talking about, I think there was about throat cancer or lungs, get cancer in the lungs from smoking, and like abusive parents, and like Dyer's Eve is like one of the heaviest fucking songs ever, period. Just, you could see somebody getting inspired to make that 90s style of music, because it was just like, that's it. That's fucking, they were ahead of it. Like, they already got it. But Lars is like a fucking douche who wanted to be in a LA rock band rather than just, enjoy and evolve. But yeah, man, fucking, oh my God, like Metallica for me was just they were like so big, and like being in California was like, at the time it was like them and Van Halen were like the love. Like 3 rock stations were playing the Monsters of Rock concert live on air, simulcast all throughout the LA area. So it was fucking wild, man. And my mom liked it. It was the other weird thing.
Yeah, my dad loved Metallica, Slayer, even some of the Testament. I mean, anything that had a good groove to it. So we got like 3 minutes left here. I definitely learned new appreciation for Diamond Head on Garage Days. They're a very good old British band. Anyway, all right. So my number one is, it all starts and ends with Slayer. Talking about thrash metal, Slayer is thrash metal. Period.
Yeah.
They've always been thrash metal. Their very last album, Repentless, was thrash metal. No other band has started as thrash metal and ended as thrash metal and has as much thrash metal guitar riffs and everything that goes along with the fast drumming, the speed drumming, the groove drumming, the lyrics, insightful, intelligent lyrics. They personify thrash metal. When Megadeth and Metallica slowed down, Slayer did it. Now, not saying Divine Intervention is not a superior album to, say, the Black Album. It's not. In fact, that was one of my most disappointed Slayer albums that I listened to. But it all starts 1983, Die by the Sword. I think that right away, if you're talking about the 80s, Slayer, they're the kings of thrash metal, still even over Metallica. Rain and Blood is the greatest thrash metal album of all time. Seasons in the Abyss is one of them, So South to Heaven. Those 3 albums together, you have to put Hell Awaits in there. Those 4 records are 4 of the greatest thrash metal albums of all time. When they started out, not only Die by the Sword, Black Magic, heavy Iron Maiden influence, you can hear it in the music. Die by the Sword, to me, in that first album, I like it better than Kill 'Em All. I like Show No Mercy better than Kill 'Em All. Die by the Sword is the greatest thrash metal song of any band on their first record. The second record, Chemical Warfare, about people going to war using other methods besides ground troops and ground battles to try to get an edge on the opponent. It's about nuclear war, too, about how It pollutes the air and the water and the soil and the ground and everything that it destroys, creates mutants and genetic mutations in human beings. That's off their second album. Rain and Blood is the most controversial, the fastest, heaviest 28 minutes you'll ever listen to in your life. They decidedly slowed it down for South to Heaven. It was still a great record. So maybe South to Heaven is slower. Gets right into Silent Scream, and it's as fast as anything as Rain and Blood.
Cool. Yeah.
Seasons in the Abyss, if you go through that record song for song, I mean, Expendable Youth about gang warfare in the streets of L.A. When you talk about, they weren't just singing it from a book. I'm not saying they didn't read books, but they were talking about what was actually going on in the streets. They definitely had an ear to the streets better, I think, than any of the other thrash metal bands. Jeff Henneman, my favorite thrash metal musician of all time. He wrote the lyrics to Raining Blood and Behind the Crooked Cross, and he wrote Die by the Sword and Angel of Death, and musically wrote a bunch of stuff too. He wrote Blood Red, and he wrote Spirit in Black, at least the music. He wrote War Ensemble. It just goes on and on. Talk about a tongue-in-cheek reference to war. Support the war. We need your war support. They were definitely looked at as, oh, what are you, anti-American? That was during the first Iraq War. They go into the 90s, like, okay, Divine Intervention. Not my favorite record. It was okay. Diabolus and Musica was good. They did an all punk covers album because Henneman was in a punk band called the Pap Smears. By the way, another Slayer tidbit. We got 2 minutes here. Another Slayer tidbit is Kerry King was recruited by Dave Mustaine to replace a guitar player. Actually, I think it was when it was first starting out. I think we're talking about 83, 84. Dave Mustaine had a horrible habit, and ironically, he tries to talk about it now. His revisionist history is a little off. He's like, I'm not into poaching guitar players from other bands. Meanwhile, every replacement he had for every guitar player was somebody from another band. So anyway, Slayer, as we go on, like God Hates, when I came out, I was like, holy shit, this is heavy and fast and great. Still very good. You can go on to Christ Illusion, World Painted Blood, and it ends with Repentless in 2015. Again, it's nothing but top 40 records, gold albums, sold out stadiums, live aggression. In 1991, one of the greatest live records of all time. Fraught with controversy. Slayer they have the best pretty much of everything. Tom Araya, ultimate heavy metal lead singer, doesn't get enough credit. The way that he growls and screams and sings, you can still hear every lyric just about, is unprecedented. Henneman's songwriting, I look at Henneman really as the lead guitar player. Kerry King is a little better at the rhythms. And then, of course, Dave Lombardo, my favorite heavy metal drummer of all time. Praise to Slayer. They are the best thrash metal band of all time. Dirty, of course, has got Metallica. I would almost guarantee that that'd be maybe there's a few more fans that would vote for Metallica, but hey, you want to vote, please contact us. We can certainly tell you guys what you think next time you do a podcast as far as what you had to say about this episode, of who maybe we missed, or who you guys would throw in there. Shout out to DRI, Sacred Reich, Creator, and there's other bands too. Anyway, any last words, Dirty, before we get out of here?
No, this is great. It's exciting to hear about the listeners too, but no, this is great. This was pretty good. This is hard though, because it's like I kept forgetting bands, and I'm like, oh shit. And so,
Hey,
so
everybody, stay tuned for Megadeth versus Metallica. We're going to do that. We'll get to hear more stories about Metallica. Dirty can go on more about the Metallica Megadeth stories. We'll talk about concerts and stuff. Anyway, we've got to go. It's our time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Right. Thank
you for listening. We'll talk to you next time. And thrash on.
Rock and roll.